Okay, so I'm making this video to explain a few things about a concept called long-tail SEO. And I think the importance of understanding long-tail SEO is once that you understand it, you can craft a strategy around how to build landing pages to optimize for search engine optimization. With this knowledge in mind, you can decide whether or not to have a single landing page targeting a high frequency keyword or use multiple landing pages for a low frequency keyword. But the most important thing, I think, is to realize what is the actual distribution of traffic versus a keyword look like, okay? So before I go into a long tail SEO, let me just kind of explain how long tail distribution works. So long tail distribution is a phenomenon that appears often in the internet, and this is a pretty typical long tail distribution graph. So what does this exactly represent? Let's say, for example, on the x-axis, you take let's say the most popular phone, right, that is being used in the world. That would probably be an iPhone over here. And then you take the least popular phone, which is, I don't know, maybe like an Oppo or some other lesser known brand. Okay. So the idea of a long tail is that there are very few items that get a disproportionate amount of attention. And there are many items that get a very small percentage of the overall attention. Okay, so that's why it's called a long tail. Essentially, this yellow segment right here is a representation of long tail. Now, this idea first came up when people started selling things on the internet, like books. So Amazon discovered that okay, most people will know or understand a few very popular, very famous books, right? These are maybe the books that you read or the ones that you hear from very famous authors. But what Amazon discovered is that there's probably hundreds of thousands of books that are written by very less famous, more obscure authors. But each of these hundreds of thousands of books gets, let's say, a few dozen sales a year, whereas the most popular books get maybe hundreds of thousands or millions of copies sold a year. So this phenomenon happens all the time on the internet. Because of the way the internet is set up and attention is focused, you typically have a few things that get a lot of attention, and you have a lot of things that get a little bit of attention. So that's the idea of long tail. This primary concept also applies for keywords. So if you think about, let's say, a particular keyword related to our industry, for example, like the idea of Bali Villa. Bali Villa itself is probably one of the highest volume keywords that there is. There's more searches for Bali Villa than most other keywords around that particular topic. Such as let's say Bali villas in Seminyak. So if you're thinking about like a head type keyword, you're thinking of Bali villas. But if you're thinking about something more, let's say down the curve, maybe you're thinking about Bali villas in Seminyak or Bali villas in Kuta or Bali villas in Ubud. So those would be more mid-region because they would appear a little bit less frequently than a keyword like Bali villas, but they would also appear more frequently than, let's say, a tail type keyword. Now, what's an example of a tail type keyword? Let's take that keyword that we just had, like let's say Bali villas in Ubud with private pool. Okay, so that's an even more detailed but even more obscure keyword that is probably going to be less likely to show up. But once you get into that level, there becomes an abundance of those possibilities. You could say Bali villa in Ubud with private butler, Bali villa in Ubud with garden, Bali villa in Ubud with hair dryer, right? Any type of amenity. So there's going to be a lot of searches on those, and the volume of it overall, if you're able to win all those different keyword searches, could be significant, right? So the idea of a long tail is you have two choices in your strategy. You can either focus on one thing, do that one thing very, very well, and then build a tremendous presence in SEO based on that one thing, right? Or you can build, let's say, hundreds of thousands of smaller keywords and win relative small victories on those. And the combined sum of all the traffic can sometimes be the same as something in the head. Okay, so how does it apply to SEO? This is kind of like the way you can think of it. So if you want to win a head type keyword, it is part of your strategy to think about, can you prioritize and do you have the right resources to spend to win a big keyword. Let's say, for instance, in this case, like the word shoes, right? You got to pick your battles, and in some of these cases, it is probably impossible. For example, if you wanted to win the keyword Bali Villas using a website like Bukit Vista, that probably will never happen. Just simply put, if you're looking for Bali Villas, you're going to need a website that has almost like an infinite amount of content around that. And if you think about, let's say, a platform such as Airbnb, Traveloka, or Booking.com, that kind of platform will inevitably have more content than a page like Bukit Vista, right? So that is an example of a very high cost and high competition type keyword that we are probably unlikely to actually win, right? But then if we let's say evolve that, if we say we want to win a particular keyword like Bali Villa in Uluwatu, right? Or Bali Villa in a smaller region, or Bali Villa in Uluwatu with private pool, something like that, then we're more likely to be able to win that because there's less maybe competition and less optimization on a site like Booking.com for that particular keyword that they're looking for. Okay, so understanding, I think, the long tail is ultimately very vital and important to being able to plan your strategy. If you see that there is a possibility to simply win a very large keyword and just get the bulk of the traffic with your time and resources, then I think that's a good move, right? That's a good play. But if this becomes too hard or it becomes meaningless or it just can't be prioritized, then perhaps going after the keyword in the long tail is a better approach. Okay, so that's basically a short introduction on the idea of long tail SEO and how it might actually affect, once again, how you plan and consider to use multiple or single page for your optimization. Okay, hopefully that's helpful, and have a great day.